Good afternoon. What is a very warm, bright and sunny day. It is Friday the 16th of June. I've got a nice hot cup of tea. And a box to continue unboxing. And I have already pulled out a role-playing game of A Long Journey Upriver or Downriver from Godforsaken Co. The anthology of one-on-one scenarios for Cthulhu Confidential from Pelgrane Press, and below that I have this Godforsaken Monte Cook, Sean K. Reynolds. This is a supplement from Monte Cook Games for the Cypher System. So, dragons, magic, wands, singing swords and flying carpets, and above all, heroes. What fantasy worlds inspire you? The classic high fantasy of Tolkien's Zelazny or Jordan, modern fantasy like the Harry Potter series, the Dresden Files, or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, paranormal romance, the whimsy of settings like Discworld or the Dark Crystal, wuxia, swords and sorcery, or gritty low magic settings. Fantasy tells of heroes, monsters and magic. It is arguably the oldest genre of human fiction. It is also the genre that first inspired us to step into imaginary worlds through role-playing games, and it remains the most popular type of RPG setting. Godforsaken takes the Cypher System on a deep dive into the infinite variety of fantasy realms with rules, character options, gear, and a complete ready-to-use setting that makes the most use of the fantasy genre. Whatever fantasy setting you envision, the Cypher System can take you there. Godforsaken includes rules for treasure, traps, magic, and other topics particular to fantasy gaming. New playable species along with new foci, guidelines for adapting existing foci to fantasy use, and advice for building common fantasy character types in the Cypher System. Dozens of fantasy creatures and NPCs, including the Basilisk, Lich, Manticore, Elementals, Wyvern, and more. Plus scores of new ciphers and artifacts, discussion of the many varieties and subgenres of fantasy, along with sources for inspiration. The complete Godforsaken setting. Characters seek glory and wealth as they venture into the Godforsaken lands, leaving behind the protection and blessings of their gods. But there is more to these dimensions than they can possibly be prepared for. Two full-length adventures for use in the Godforsaken setting, or your own campaign, plus 3 Cypher shorts. A setting and supplement for the Cypher System requires the Cypher System rulebook for play. There we go. So we open up. We've got a nice fantasy setting. Characters basically planning a journey. Credits and contents page. Discussion of what fantasy is, the basics of it, before we get into fantasy world building in part 1. And here, building a fantasy setting, and we basically borrowing from other sources, using a published fantasy game, options you can undertake as part of setting up your game, creating a new setting, and looking at things like, the role of magic, knowledge of magic, what the magic power level is, whether there is magic and technology, and how the two work together, and even there's a campaign idea within the first few pages. And then discussion of different types of magic. I mean, that could just be an incredibly long chapter of its own. Options, looking at combining other genres, so adding history and fantasy together. Discussing elements of the genre, is death permanent, map making, advising players about your setting, essentially getting everything, talking about what your setting is like, and then telling your players, letting them know what the expectations of the setting will be. And then a campaign idea, character is you. What would you be like in a fantasy setting? Not an uncommon idea, it's been done a few times before. Fantasy plots, so we've got some samples there. Creating a plot, that's quite short before we get onto fantasy character options for your characters. So discussing classic kind of roles: alchemist, druid, barbarian, merchants, fighters, and more. So here's how to do them under the Cypher System. There are lots of other role-playing games that which will do them already. But if you like the Cypher System, here's the guidelines, building upon those rules in the Cypher System core rulebook. So, you know, things like takes animal shape, uses wild magic, walks the wild woods, wields an enchanted weapon, and other options, new abilities, animal forms that the character could take. And so these are all explained in detail. You have an equipment list for a medieval setting. Fantasy gaming inspiration. So here, you know, looking at things like, you know, looking at the different types of fantasy, high fantasy. So Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, Lloyd Alexander's Chronicles of Prydain. Light fantasy is perhaps Fafhrd the Grey Mouser, Lankmar, Fritz Lieber, Conan the Barbarian, Robert E. Howard, of course. And it's going to do the same for the various different other genres you can connect to fantasy. So included in that, you know, historical fantasy, that includes The Princess Bride. Magical rules modules, basically, so plug and play elements to building your magic in the setting, crafting magic items, crafting ciphers, ciphers being the devices through which most player characters will use magic. They're common kind of throwaway devices, you know, typically one use and done. Artifacts have greater powers, their magic lasts longer. How to handle death and resurrection in the setting. And different magics and so on. Rituals. And then magical technology, magic plus technology, if you have that kind of setting. And again, options, ideas for all of that. Even magical martial arts, secret and true names, that can be important for your magic. Even got rules for wishes there. Fantasy rules modules, and doing the same again, you know, basically plug and play options in here. Handling gold, manifest ciphers, artifacts, even things like handling walls, you know, dungeons, castles, keeps, traps, that sort of thing. With the rules for traps, if you want to do dungeon style adventures. Here you've got basically traps as kind of objects to be overcome, challenges, if you like. So, fantasy species. Gnomes there, lizard folk, halflings. And then Cypher shorts. These are little encounters you can throw at your player characters. The thing on the precipice. So you've got Brawl first. Lost in the dungeon. Creatures and NPCs. Starting with Basilisk. As just going on through, hitting some classics like the Cyclops. You've got the Elementals. Gorgon. Hydra. And you'll excuse me because hay fever. again, I keep having to apologise. It just can't be helped this time of year. If I could put the Nook indoors, I would at this point, but I think my partner would complain, and then point out that I'd have to bring out all the books in to take it to make space for it. Manticores, mermaids, worm that walks, wraith. And you've got various NPCs, so bards and berserkers, dwarves, elves. Fantasy ciphers all ready for you to drop into your game. And even the idea here, character abilities of ciphers, so you can sort of like limit their use. Fantasy artifacts, so they're the greater, bigger devices which have more power, will last longer. So you've got some classics there like the Cloak of the Elf kind or the Crystal Ball. Ring of Fall flourishing, so you can fall any distance. And then we have the Godforsaken setting. Bond there, the Blessed Land. So you've got a description, a map, influence of the gods on and religion on society, and then the doors to the Godforsaken lands. Those lands that have been forgotten or ignored by the gods. Characters in Godforsaken. So you have adventurers, warders, scouts, and emissaries. A guide to the Godforsaken lands. Running adventures of the Godforsaken lands, so advice for the game master. And then we have the first adventure. So the guide to it is fairly brief, but I mean it's enough to get started. You've now got maps of the Forsaken Lands where the player characters are going to be exploring. And then let's see, you should have the second adventure. Promised me 2. Yeah, the firmament, a tunnel in the sky. Again, slightly different region. So the Godforsaken lands are bigger than potentially first imagined. And then basically Korak Mar through the doorway beneath the mountain. I got actually more adventures in there than I thought at first. And then so they're not actually those aren't the adventures. These are just sort of like just more region guides actually. So I sit corrected. I do apologise. And here are the actual adventures. Secret of the Soulsmith. There's actually quite a lot of background. And followed by 2 adventures. Another adventure, yeah, within the monstrous. There we go. That's relatively short. Both relatively short, but they are starting points for a campaign set in the Godforsaken lands. And then we come to Index and quick effort for Cypher System. That's perfectly right. And another piece of artwork, a bit more action to this one, with the adventurers out on the mission, attempting basically to run away from whatever thing they've unleashed. So that's Godforsaken for the Cypher System, published by Monte Cook Games. Hope you've enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you have, then please do click on the like button down below, and of course if you've got any comment or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to get more unboxings in the Nook of the week, in which case you'll see me out here with a box and a game which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied with a nice hot cup of tea. Then please do click on the subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching another unboxing Nook. I'll be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.